Everything look okay? Rock on. Oh, fluffy. So today we're making our wool roll bread, which is a beautiful looking bread. It looks like wool that uses milk bread as the base. So it's super fluffy and pillowy, and we're filling it with a slightly sweetened raspberry cream cheese filling, and it has this unreal texture. So I'll show you how to make this version of wool roll bread, but then you can do anything you want with it, fill it with a number of different fillings, and make it your own. Let's get started. So the first step in making our wool roll bread is to make the Tangzhong starter. And it's a really simple process of just cooking some of the flour in the recipe with some of the liquid into a paste. And this is what gives milk bread some of that signature fluffiness and allows it to stay fresh for days. So don't be intimidated, it's really a quick and easy process. So let's start by adding both our water and our milk to our pot. And then I will add our bread flour. And this is just a portion of the flour and liquid that is going to be in the final dough. We're just cooking it together to form a paste. So whisk your milk and water and flour until it's smooth. And over low heat, you want to cook this mixture until it forms a paste. It should look almost like a pudding consistency, not too thick, but your whisk or your spatula should leave lines when you're stirring it in the bottom of the pot. Okay, this is looking good. It looks like a thick pudding consistency. It's nice and smooth. So I'm going to transfer it directly to my mixing bowl, whatever bowl you're going to use to mix your dough. So I've got my hot Tangzhong starter in my bowl. Now we're ready to add the rest of the dough ingredients. So I'm using whole milk that's cold from the fridge, and the hot Tangzhong plus the cold milk together will make the dough just the right temperature. Then I'll add 1 large egg, and this helps give the dough a little bit of richness and also helps it turn nice golden brown. And then I'm adding my butter, which is room temperature. This will give it great flavor, of course, it's butter. Then I'll add my yeast right to the ingredients, salt, backbone of flavor. And then this is a slightly sweet dough, so I'm adding some sugar as well. Now it's time for our flour. We are going to be using King Arthur bread flour today, and that's because this dough needs the higher protein content in bread flour to get that beautiful wool-like structure in the bread. It also has a really nice, pleasant chew. So I'm adding 300 grams of bread flour, which is about 2½ cups, right on top of all the other ingredients. So now I'll use the dough hook to let my dough knead for about 7 to 8 minutes until it's smooth and shiny. So our dough has been kneading for about 8 minutes, and it's looking good. It's definitely gained strength. It's gathering into one ball around the dough hook. It is sticky, and that's okay. This is an enriched dough. It'll stick to the sides of the bowl and the bottom a bit. Just scrape it down when you're done kneading, and resist the urge to add extra flour because that will make your dough heavy, and we want really light, beautiful crumb here. So I'll transfer this to another bowl, and I'll cover it to let it rise for about an hour while it becomes nice and puffy. So our dough has been rising for about an hour. Let's take a look. It looks great. It is visibly puffy and bigger in size, maybe not doubled in bulk, but definitely larger. And when I poke it with my finger, the indent slowly fills back in, so it is ready for pre-shaping. I'll start by lightly dusting my surface with a bit of flour, and then I'll turn the dough out onto the floured surface. So our goal is to evenly divide this into 4 pieces, and the easiest way to do that is to divide it in half and then in half again so that you end up with even quarters. I'll start by just scoring the dough roughly in half again. Make sure that looks accurate, looks pretty good, so I'll go ahead and cut the dough into 4 pieces. If you want to be really accurate or you want to double check your sizes, you could weigh them. They should be about 170 grams each. So now we will roughly shape these into balls. So the easiest way to do that is just start by gently deflating the dough, then take the outside edges and bring them in towards the center, gathering them up into one seam. Pinch them shut almost like you have a little purse, and then turn it over. Make sure there's a little bit of flour underneath so that it doesn't stick. So I'll put these nice and close together. They're not touching, they have a little bit of room between each. And then I'll just use my bowl to cover these for 10 minutes, which will allow the gluten to relax so that when we roll out the dough in our next step, it's really nice and easy. So while our dough is resting, let's make the filling. Today we're using a cream cheese, lemon, raspberry filling that's a little bit sweet, but you could do a number of different options. You could fill this bread with cinnamon sugar or jam, or we even have a savory version online that has butter and cheese and herbs. We're going to start this recipe with soft cream cheese. It should be a little bit warmer than room temperature just so that it's easy to mix. I'm going to add that to my mixing bowl. Then I'm adding my sugar so that it's a little bit sweet, and a pinch of salt, and then our lemon zest. We're doing the zest of 2 whole lemons so that it's really aromatic and citrusy and smells fresh. Okay, so we'll add the zest of our second lemon, and then we'll stir this until it's nice and smooth and combined. It smells so good and fresh at this step. And now we can add our raspberries and our flour. The flour just helps stabilize the filling and keep it all in place. And we're using freeze-dried raspberries, which pack a ton of flavor for the small amount of volume. And so you can just lightly crush them with your fingers. They'll break down pretty easily when you're stirring. You could substitute a different freeze-dried fruit here, like strawberries would be nice, or blueberries. You just want to break them up or crush them lightly before you add them to your filling. So our dough has been resting for 10 minutes, and I can tell that it's nice and relaxed, so we will get on to shaping. And I'll start by working with just one piece of dough at a time, give my work surface a little bit of flour, and then I will pat it gently to deflate it. And I'm trying to roll this out into a rectangle, so from the very start you want to encourage the dough into that rectangle shape to make the rolling process easier. So I'm just going to kind of pat it out, start to get it into a rectangle, and then give it a quick roll. So I'm going to set this piece aside to rest briefly while I do the same thing to the other pieces, and that allows this piece to rest while I work on these others, so when I roll it again, it will roll out even easier. So now I'll go back to the first piece that I rolled and try to get it into its final shape. So we're aiming to make all of these rectangles that are roughly 12 inches by 6 inches. And an easy way to measure that is with something like a bench knife or a bowl scraper. These are exactly 6 inches, so it should be about 2 bench knife lengths long and 1 across. Okay, so all 4 pieces of dough are rolled out into rectangles about 6 inches by 12 inches. I'm going to prepare my pan. You can use a 9-inch springform or a 9-inch cake pan as long as it's at least 2 inches deep. I've got a parchment round that I'll put in the bottom, just a little bit of spray to make that stay in place, and then I'll spray the bottom and the sides to prevent sticking. Now I have my raspberry lemon cream cheese filling that we made, and I've divided it roughly into 4 because we're trying to evenly distribute it. And you can use a scoop or a spoon to portion out the filling. So roughly 1/4 onto the top half of 1 piece of dough. The best tool for the job here is a small offset spatula. You want to spread the filling evenly, almost all the way to the edges, leave just a small border, the top and sides, and spread the filling so that it goes about 2/3 of the way down the dough. You want to leave the bottom 5 to 6 inches of dough bare. So now you need either a bench knife, a sharp chef's knife, or even a pizza wheel could work nicely for this next step. We're going to cut the portion that's not covered with filling into thin strips, about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch thick, and you want to make them as consistent as possible. So I'll start on this side and just make sure I'm cutting all the way through the dough so that I have little, almost like fringes on the bottom of the dough, all the way across. So now your dough will look a little bit like a jellyfish or maybe a pink octopus, and you're going to gently fold the edges of the dough over just to seal that filling inside and prevent it from seeping out. And give them a little bit of a press so that they don't stick up too much. Otherwise, when we roll up the dough, you'll have the shape that almost looks like a dog bone. So just press it flat so that when we roll up our dough, you get an even tube. Now's the fun part. We get to roll this up. So starting at the top, just use your fingers to encourage the dough forward. So almost like cinnamon roll dough. Just roll it gently. Keep the ends even. And when you get to the bottom, as you roll over the parts that you cut, you'll see that you get this beautiful cut design that makes that wool roll have its signature look to it. So with the seam on the bottom, you want to put it into your prepared pan. You want to squish it just a little bit because you want this portion of dough to only take up a quarter of the pan. We have to fit all 4 pieces. So just give it a little bit of a press on the ends to get it in place, and then we'll repeat that process with these remaining 3 pieces. So all 4 pieces of dough have been rolled up, and I have about a quarter of my circle left to fill with this last piece. And just give the other 2 pieces a little bit of a squish to make sure that there's enough room to put this last piece. Make sure the seam is on the bottom, and then just kind of tuck it in there. Perfect. And then you want this circle to look as seamless as possible, so gently arrange the dough. If you have to move it slightly, you can. You can use an offset spatula to kind of scooch one end over that's pushing up a little bit. But at the end of shaping, it should look like this. It should be a complete round, and we'll let this rest for another hour or so that it becomes nice and puffy, and then we'll bake it. So our wool roll just came out of the oven. It has this beautiful golden brown color to it. Part of that comes from brushing it with milk, but it's also just baked perfectly all the way through. If you test it with a digital thermometer, it'll read at least 190 degrees Fahrenheit in the center. So now that our wool roll is cool enough to touch, I can take off the sides of the springform pan, which is always fun. It's like the grand reveal. It looks beautiful. It has the golden brown sides all the way around, and it should come off the bottom easily because we have that parchment round in there. And I'll transfer it to a wire rack where it will finish cooling completely. But I'm really happy with the way this turned out. There are some parts that rose a little bit more than others, but that's okay. This is supposed to be an organic looking bread. It's really beautiful no matter what. So it's finally the time that I've been waiting for. I get to taste our wool roll bread. I love how you can see the swirl in each slice, and the raspberries are just peeking through, and it smells a little bit citrusy because of that lemon zest. The milk bread is super fluffy. Wow. It almost eats like cake, even though there's not very much sugar in it. It just has such an amazing texture. You could serve this for breakfast or brunch with a cup of coffee or tea. You could serve it as dessert with a dollop of whipped cream on top. It's so good, and I can't wait to experiment with different fillings. This is milk bread that looks like wool, but it tastes delicious. It's our wool roll bread. Bake it, try it, share it with the people you love. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can bake along with us soon. Thanks for watching.